The continent of Westeros is home to a number of old and mysterious religions that have ingrained themselves in the culture of their people, becoming a symbol of their heritage, values, and allegiances. The eldest faith of Westeros, it is said the children of the forest worshipped the old gods before the migration of men into the continent. Though the faith had no priests, holy books, rituals, or dogma, there was a tradition among their worshippers to carve the faces of the great weirwood trees which were once found all over Westeros. The magical green seers of the children and later the first men could see through the eyes of the carved trees, and it is said the nameless gods inhabited these trees and the children would join them in death. Though the first men eventually adopted their faith after the migration to the continent, the Andals would cut down nearly all the weirwood trees and purge nearly all the lands below the neck of its worship. While the faith of the old gods had no strict requirements, incest, kinslaying, and slavery were considered offenses, while honor and guest right were considered sacred. Found in the hills of Andalos, the civilization of the Andals worshipped 7 aspects of a single powerful god. These aspects were represented by the father, the mother, the warrior, the maiden, the smith, the crone, and the stranger. The faith of the 7 was centered around a holy book called the Seven-Pointed Star, and the Andals would take it with them through their migration to Westeros. Nearly all of the continent up to the neck converted to the faith, while the Iron Islands and the north resisted. Unlike the worship of the old gods, the new gods, as they were called, had strict moral teachings, dogma, and traditional practices, as well as a religious hierarchy adhering to a single authority known as the High Septon. Gambling, birth outside of marriage, incest, and kinslaying were abhorred, while piety, humility, and knighthood were honored. The Ironborn, proud and harsh sea raiders of the Iron Islands have long been of the drowned religion, since before the invasion of the Andals, and they have resisted any and all attempts to convert and change their culture. Centered around the reverence of the old ways, the drowned god, also called He Who Dwells Beneath the Waves, was said to have raised the Ironborn to pillage and rape, and make their names known through blood, fire, and song. The drowned god also opposed the storm god, who was the main enemy of man, and brought the storms that sunk their ships. Though there were few restrictions and tenets in the religion, those that existed were firmly held. Prayers were directed towards the sea, while babies were drowned and blessed with salt shortly after their birth. Drowning was also the traditional form of execution. There was also a clergy known as the drowned priests, who wore shabby robes and dedicated their lives to worship. There are some who believe the religion traces its lineage to the Deep Ones, thought in Ironborn legend to be half-Merling ancestors who came from the west across the Sunset Sea. The Red God, R'hllor, also called the Lord of Light and the Heart of Fire, the god of flame and shadow, was a major deity of Essos, found in nearly every major city and port. Their clergy, known as Red Priests, wearing crimson robes, have temples in many places and often possess strange and impressive fire magics. These demonstrations of power convert many followers, and their powers have seemed to increase since the return of dragons to the world, suggesting a possible link between the religion and the dragon race. The Red God is the opposer of the Great Other, a god of darkness, and the two are locked in an eternal battle. According to the legend of Azor Ahai, which they consider sacred, the White Walkers were the children of the Great Other, and Azor Ahai was empowered by the Lord of Light to defeat them. While the religion's presence is strongest in the east, Westeros has in recent years seen a rise of converts to the Red Faith, and many have suggested the time of prophecy is approaching, when Azor Ahai will be reborn to once again fight the others, a battle that many believe will be centered in Westeros. The ancient Rhoynar of Essos were said to have worshipped a pantheon of river gods, the greatest of which was the Mother Rhoyne, who represented the great river which gave their civilization life. After the destruction of their homeland by the Valyrians, Nymeria led the Rhoynar to Dorne, where most of them converted to the faith of the 7. Many descendants of the Rhoynar, however, that continue to live around the world and even in Dorne, are said to still worship the Great Mother, believing she will one day call them back to their ancestral homeland. Her worshippers in Westeros are known as Orphans of the Greenblood and sail along the river Greenblood as nomads, keeping to their ancestral ways. Other gods of the religion included a turtle god, the Old Man of the River, and his adversary, the Crab King. North of the Vale, 3 small islands, known as the Three Sisters, were said to have once worshipped the Lord of the Skies and the Lady of the Waves during the time of the First Men. Storms were considered sacred and to be the result of their gods mating. Faith in these gods ended with the invasion of the Andals and the spread of the faith of the Seven.